The 303 British a 7.7 x 56 mmR is a 303-inch calibre-rimmed rifle cartridge first developed in Britain as a black powder round put into service in December 1888 for the Metford rifle. In 1891 the cartridge was adapted to use smokeless powder. It was the standard British and Commonwealth military cartridge from 1889 until the 1950s, when it was replaced by the 7.62 x 51 mm NATO cartridge dimensions. The 303 British has 3.64 ml cartridge case capacity. The pronounced tapering exterior shape of the case was designed to promote reliable case feeding and extraction in bolt-action rifles and machine guns alike. Under challenging conditions, .303 British maximum CIP cartridge dimensions, all sizes in millimeters. Americans would define the shoulder angle at alpha 2 approximately equals 17 degrees. The common rifling twist rate for this cartridge is 254 mm. 5 grooves O lands equals 7.70 mm. O grooves equal 7.92 mm. Land width equals 2.12 mm and the primer type is Burden box O. According to the official CIP rulings, the 303 British can handle up to 365.00 megapascals Pmax piezo pressure. In CIP-regulated countries, every rifle cartridge combo has to be proofed at 125% of this maximum CIP pressure to certify for sale to consumers. This means that 303 British chambered arms in CIP-regulated countries are currently proof-tested at 456.00 megapascals piezo pressure. The SAAMI maximum average pressure for this cartridge is 49,000 psi piezo pressure. The measurement, 303 inches, the nominal size of the bore measured between the lands, which follows the older black powder nomenclature. Measured between the grooves, the nominal size of the bore is 311 inch. Bores for many 303 military surplus rifles are often found ranging from around 309 inch up to 318 inch. Recommended bullet diameter for standard 303 British cartridges is 312 inch. Military use. History and development. During a service life of over 70 years with the British Commonwealth Armed Forces, the 303-inch cartridge in its ball pattern progressed through 10 marks, which eventually extended to a total of about 26 variations. Propellant. The original 303 British service cartridge employed black powder as a propellant, and was adopted for the Metford rifle, which had rifling designed to lessen fouling from this propellant. The Metford was used as a trial platform by the British Committee on Explosives to experiment with many different smokeless powders then coming to market, including ballisite, cordite, and rifleite. Ballisite was a stick-type smokeless powder composed of soluble nitrocellulose and nitroglycerine. Cordite was a stick-type or chopped smokeless gunpowder composed of nitroglycerine, gun cotton, and mineral jelly, while rifleite was a true nitrocellulose powder composed of soluble and insoluble nitrocellulose, phenylamidazobenzes, and volatiles similar to French smokeless powders. Unlike cordite, rifleite was a flake powder and contained no nitroglycerine. Excessive wear of the shallow Metford rifling with all smokeless powders then available caused ordnance authorities to institute a new type of barrel rifling designed by the RSAF, Enfield, to increase barrel life. The rifle was referred to thereafter as the Enfield. After extensive testing, the Committee on Explosives selected cordite for use in the Mark II 303 British service cartridge projectile. The initial 303 Mark I and Mk2 service cartridges employed a 215-grain, round-nosed copper-nickel full-metal jacketed bullet with a lead core. After tests determined that the service bullet had too thin a jacket when used with powder.It, the Mk2 bullet was introduced, with a flat base and thicker copper-nickel jacket. Mark II, Mark VI. The Mk2 round-nosed bullet was found to be unsatisfactory when used in combat, particularly when compared to the dum-dum rounds issued in limited numbers in 1897 during the Chitral and Tirah expeditions of 1897-98 on the north-west frontier of India. This led to the introduction of the Cartridge SA Ball 303-inch cordite Mark III, basically the original 215-grain bullet with the jacketing cut back to expose the lead in the nose. Similar hollow-point bullets were used in the MKIV and MKV loadings, which were put into mass production. The design of the MKIV hollow-point bullet shifted bullet weight rearwards, improving stability and accuracy over the regular round-nose bullet. These soft-nosed and hollow-point bullets, while effective against human targets, had a tendency to shed the outer metal jacket upon firing, the latter occasionally stuck in the bore, causing a dangerous obstruction. The Hague Convention of 1899 later declared that use of expanding bullets against signatories of the convention was inhumane, and as a result the Mk3, MKIV, and MKV were withdrawn from active service. The remaining stocks were used for target practice. The issue of expanding bullets was brought up at the 1899 Hague Convention by Swiss and Dutch representatives. The Swiss were concerned about small arms ammunition that increased suffering, and the Dutch focused on the British Mark III 303 loading in response to the treatment of Boer settlers in South Africa. The British and American defense was that they should not focus on specific bullet designs, like hollow points, but instead on rounds that caused superfluous injury. The parties in the end agreed to abstain from using expanding bullets. As a result, the Mark III and other expanding versions of the 303 were not issued during the Second Boer War. Boer guerrillas allegedly used expanding hunting ammunition against the British during the war, and New Zealand Commonwealth troops may have brought Mark III rounds with them privately after the Hague Convention without authorization. To replace the Mk3 IV and V, the Mark VI round was introduced in 1904, using a round-nose bullet similar to the Mk2, but with a thinner jacket designed to produce some expansion, though this proved not to be the case. Mark VII in 1898, APX, with their BAL-D, designed for the 8mm level cartridge, revolutionized bullet design with the introduction of pointed Spitzer rounds. In addition to being pointed, the round was also much lighter in order to deliver a higher muzzle velocity. It was found that as velocity increased, the bullet suddenly became much more deadly. In 1910, the British took the opportunity to replace their MK5 cartridge with a more modern design. The Mark VII loading used a 174 grains pointed bullet with a flat base. The 303 British Mark VII cartridge had a muzzle velocity of 2,440 feet per second and a maximum range of approximately 3,000 yards. The Mk7 was different from earlier 303 bullet designs are Spitzer projectiles in general, although it appears to be a conventional Spitzer-shaped full-metal jacket bullet. This appearance is deceptive. Its designers made the front third of the interior of the Mk7 bullets out of aluminium eternite wood pulp or compressed paper, instead of lead, and they were autoclaved to prevent wound infection. This lighter nose shifted the center of gravity of the bullet towards the rear, making it tail-heavy. Although the bullet was stable in flight due to the gyroscopic forces imposed on it by the rifling of the barrel, it behaved very differently upon hitting the target. As soon as the bullet hit the target and decelerated, its heavier lead base caused it to pitch violently and deform, thereby inflicting more severe gunshot wounds than a standard single-core Spitzer design. In spite of this, the Mk7 Bullet was legal due to the full metal jacket used according to the terms of the Hague Convention. The Mk7 rounds have versions utilizing nitrocellulose flake powder smokeless propellants. The nitrocellulose versions, first introduced in World War I, were designated with HZ postfix indicated after the type and in head stamps. .276 Enfield .303 British cartridges, along with the Lee Enfield Rifle, were heavily criticized after the Second Boer War. The heavy round-nosed bullets had low muzzle velocities and suffered compared to the 7x 57mm rounds fired from the Mauser Model 1895. The high-velocity 7mm Mauser had a flatter trajectory and longer range that excelled on the open country of the South African plains. In 1910, work began on a long-range replacement cartridge, which emerged in 1912 as the 276 Enfield. The British also sought to replace the Lee Enfield rifle with the pattern 1913 Enfield rifle, based on the Mauser bolt-action design. Although the round had better ballistics, troop trials in 1913 revealed problems including excessive recoil, muzzle flash, and barrel wear and overheating. Attempts were made to find a cooler burning propellant, but further trials were halted in 1914 by the onset of World War I. As a result, the Lee Enfield rifle was retained, and the 303 British cartridge was kept in service. Mk8. In 1938 the Mk8 round was approved to obtain greater range from the Vickers machine gun, slightly heavier than Mk7 Bullet at 175 grains. The primary difference was the addition of a boat tail and more propellant, giving a muzzle velocity of 2,525 to 2,900 feet per second. As a result, the chamber pressure was significantly higher, at 42,000–60,000 lbf², depending upon loading, compared to the 39,000 lbf² of the Mk7 round. Cross-sectional images of Mk8 ammunition indicate that its boat-tail bullet was long and gently tapered, providing a very high ballistic coefficient. Mk8 ammunition was described as being for all suitably sighted, 303-inch small arms and machine guns, but caused significant bore erosion in weapons formerly using Mk7 cordite, ascribed to the channeling effect of the bow-tail projectile. As a result, it was prohibited from general use with rifles and light machine guns except in emergency. As a consequence of the official prohibition, ordnance personnel reported that every man that could get his hands on Mk8 ammunition promptly used it in his own rifle. Tracer armor-piercing and incendiary. Tracer and armor-piercing cartridges were introduced during 1915, with explosive bullets derived from Jean Pomeroy's work introduced as the Mk7. In 1916, several incendiaries were privately developed from 1914 to counter the Zeppelin threat, but none were approved until the Brock design late in 1916 as Bic Mk7 K-Wing CMDR. Frank Brock RNVR. Its inventor was a member of the Brock fireworks-making family. A later incendiary was the DeWild, which had the advantage of leaving no visible trail when fired. The DeWild was later used in some numbers in fighter guns during the 1940 Battle of Britain. These rounds were extensively developed over the years and saw several mark numbers. The last tracer round introduced into British service was the G Mark Chapter 8 in 1945. The last armor-piercing round was the W Mark 1Z in 1945, and the last incendiary round was the B Mark Chapter 7 in 1942. Explosive bullets were not produced in the UK after 1933 due to the relatively small amount of explosive that could be contained in the bullet, limiting their effectiveness, the role being taken by the use of Mark Chapter 6 and 7 incendiary bullets. In 1935 the 330 Mark Chapter 1 observing round was introduced for use in machine guns. The bullet to this round was designed to break up with a puff of smoke on impact. The later Mark Chapter 6 and 7 incendiary rounds could also be used in this role. During World War I, British factories alone produced 7 billion rounds of 303 ammunition. Factories in other countries added greatly to this total. Military surplus ammunition. Military surplus. 303 British ammunition is often available, notably at gun shows and from online dealers. It may or may not have corrosive primers. There is no problem with using ammunition loaded with corrosive primers, providing that the gun is thoroughly cleaned after use to remove the corrosive salts. Care must be taken to identify the round properly before purchase or loading into weapons. Cartridges with the Roman numeral 8 on the head stamp are the Mark Chapter 8 round, specifically designed for use in Vickers machine guns. Although Mark Chapter 8 ammunition works well in a Vickers gun, it should not be used in rifles because the boat-tailed design causes increased barrel wear. The boat-tailed bullet design of Mk8 ammunition is not in itself a problem. However, when combined with the cordite propellant used in Mk8 cartridges, which burns at a much higher temperature than nitrocellulose, there is increased barrel erosion. The cumulative effects of firing Mk8 ammunition through rifles were known during the Second World War, and British riflemen were ordered to avoid using it, except in emergencies. The best general-purpose ammunition for any 303 military rifle is the Mark Chapter 7 design because it provides the best combination of accuracy and stopping power. Head stamps and color coding. Japanese 7.7mm ammunition. Japan produced a number of machine guns that were direct copies of the British Lewis and Vickers machine guns, including the ammunition. These were primarily used in Navy aircraft. The 7.7mm cartridge used by the Japanese versions of the British guns is a direct copy of the 303 British rimmed cartridge and is distinctly different from the 7.7 x 58mm Arisaka rimless and 7.7 x 58mm Type 92 semi-rimmed cartridges used in other Japanese machine guns and rifles. Ball 174 grains. Copro nickel jacket with a composite aluminium lead core. Black primer. Armor piercing. Brass jacket with a steel core. White primer. Tracer 130 grains. Copro nickel jacket with a lead core. Red primer. Incendiary 133 grains. Brass jacket with white phosphorus and lead core. Green primer. HE copper jacket with a PETN and lead core. Purple primer. Note: standard Japanese ball ammunition was very similar to the British Mk7 cartridge. The two had identical bullet weights and their tail-heavy design, as can be seen in the cutaway diagram. Civil use. The 303 cartridge has seen much sporting use with surplus military rifles, especially in Australia, Canada, New Zealand and to a lesser extent, in the United States and South Africa. In Canada, it was found to be adequate for any game except the great bears. In Australia, it was common for military rifles to be rebarreled in 303 25ths and 303 22nds. In South Africa, 303 British Enfield rifles captured by the Boers during the Boer War were adapted for sporting purposes and became popular with many hunters of non-dangerous game, being regarded as adequate for anything from the relatively small impala to the massive eland and kudu. .303 EPS. The Canadian outdoors store Elwood EPS created an improved version of the 303 British, using a slightly expanded case. While it has better ballistic performance than standard 303 British, it suffers from case drooping, a condition which, over time, makes the case slowly unsafe to reload commercial ammunition and reloading. The 303 British is one of the few bottlenecked, rimmed centerfire rifle cartridges still in common use today. Most of the bottleneck-rimmed cartridges of the late 1880s and 1890s fell into disuse by the end of the First World War. Commercial ammunition for weapons chambered in 303 British is readily available, as the cartridge is still manufactured by major producers such as Remington, Federal, Winchester, Cellier and Amp, Bullet, PRVI, Partisan and Wolf. Commercially produced ammunition is widely available in various full metal jacket bullet, soft point, hollow point, flat-based and boat-tail designs, both Spitzer and round-nosed. Reloading equipment and ammunition components are also manufactured by several companies. Dies and other tools for the reloading of 303 British are produced by Forster, Hornady, Lee, Lyman, RCBS, and Reading. Depending on the bore and bore erosion, a reloader may choose to utilize bullet diameters of 308, 312 with 311 or 312 diameter bullets being the most common. Bullets specifically produced and sold for reloading 303 British are made by Sierra, Hornady, Spear, Woodley, Barnes, and Remington. Where extreme accuracy is required, the Sierra Match King 174 grain HPBT bullet is a popular choice. Sierra does not advocate use of Match King brand bullets for hunting applications. For hunting applications, Sierra produces the Pro Hunter in 311 diameter. The increasingly popular all-copper Barnes TSX is now available in the 311 diameter as a 150 GR projectile, which is recommended by Barnes for hunting applications. With most rifles chambered in 303 British being of military origin, success in reloading the caliber depends on the reloader's ability to compensate for the often loose chamber of the rifle, reduce charge loads and neck sizing are two unanimous recommendations from experienced loaders of 303 British to newcomers to the caliber. The classic 174 grain FMJ bullets are widely available, though purchasers may wish to check whether or not these feature the tail-heavy Mk7 design. In any case, other bullet weights are available, e.g., 150, 160, 170, 180, and 200 grain, both for hunting and target purposes. Hunting use the 303 British cartridge is suitable for all medium-sized game, and is an excellent choice for white-tailed deer and black bear hunting. In Canada it was a popular moose and deer cartridge when military surplus rifles were available and cheap. It is still used. The 303 British can offer very good penetrating ability due to a fast twist rate that enables it to fire long, heavy bullets with a high sectional density. Canadian Rangers use it for survival and polar bear protection. In 2015, the Canadian Rangers began the process to evaluate rifles chambered for .308 Winchester, as the Canadian Department of National Defence expects the currently issued Enfield No. 4 rifles will soon be very difficult if not impossible to maintain due to parts scarcity. Weapons chambered for .303 British